Two iconic hard rock albums of the 1980s are about to duke it out over which one is superior. Is it going to, track by track, is it going to be Bon Schmovi, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet versus Van Halen, 5150? How's it going, old schoolers? You are kicking it old school, and I am your host with Russell J.S., and I am your host, Russell J.S. Yes, I'm actually very happy doing these track by track, album versus album. And I want to take two classic record albums from the 1980s. In one corner, we have Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet versus Van Halen, 5150. What do these albums have in common? Well, they both came out around probably, I think, the same year. Yes, it was the same year, 1986. And each album had one song, two songs, where one from each album were played in the movie Spaceballs. And one album is the debut of a new frontman. The other, I believe, is the second sophomore album. They consider Bruce Springsteen to be New Jersey's favorite son. I'd say that Bon Jovi would be Jersey's favorite, grandsons. But we're going to go ahead and dive into these albums. Which one of these albums will reign superior to the other? And without further ado, well, before we get to the further ado, I also want to encourage you to hit like, subscribe, leave comments in the box down below, and ring the bell for notifications. I know I said I was going to be bringing out more, the Weekly Narc and Kicking It Old School, but I have been really in a lot of pain due to a knot in my back with the pain shooting into my left hand. I've been in a lot of pain lately. I don't know how I tough it out at work, but I do it. Probably because I'm motivated to make that money. But either way, I tough it out at both my jobs. So without further ado, let's check these bad Oscars out, shall we? I have gone ahead and written out the track list. Now, 5150 has got 9 songs. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet has 10 songs, so to make it a balance, I went ahead and eliminated one track off of Slippery When Wet. And the first thing I want to go into is who produced these albums. 5150 was produced by Van Halen, Mick Jones, and Don Landy. I think Don Landy worked with Springsteen at one point. I'm not sure. But Slippery When Wet was produced by my man, the late great Bruce Fairbairn, who in turn had recorded albums for such artists such as Loverboy, Blue Oyster Cult, Aerosmith, and I think he produced one of the two Dio era Black Sabbath albums that came out in the early 1980s. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. Give me time to look that one up before you go ahead and fact check me on it. Now, I know what you're thinking with this debate right here, what I'm going to do. If one album is better than the other, say I decide that Van Halen 5150's got more points than Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet, you'll probably say, oh, you must hate Bon Jovi if you go ahead and highly rate 5150 over Slippery When Wet. And same thing might go for if Bon Jovi takes the win over Van Halen. You'll probably say, you must not like Van Halen. You must not like him as you claim to. But it's not a matter. It's a matter of my opinion. I mean, you could feel free to put your opinions in the box. Which one of these albums do you think is the better? But I'm going to go by my track by track. Alright, on 5150 we've got Good Enough versus Let It Rock. Now remember when I said that both these albums each have one song that was played in the movie Spaceballs? Yes, Good Enough was actually played in that diner scene when they did the parody of Alien, where John Hurt reprised his role where he had the alien pop out of his stomach and he went, "Oh no, not again." And the alien started dancing on the counter. "Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragtime gal." Well, that's what was playing on the jukebox. And right now, Good Enough is going up against Let It Rock. I love both these songs. So, because I love both these songs, I'm going to allow Van Halen and Bon Jovi to each have a point for that. One for Van Halen, one for Bon Jovi. Alright. Why Can't This Be Love and versus You Give Love a Bad Name? Oh man, you know, once upon a time, I'm not going to say anything to diss Bon Jovi, because once upon a time, Bon Jovi really rocked, you know, back in the 80s, and then when John Bon Jovi cut his hair off and started concentrating more on the more power ballad stuff, that's when it kind of fizzled out. So, let's see, and Why Can't This Be Love? It's a decent track. I'll give Eddie and the boys that. It was a decent track. But Bon Jovi takes this one, because You Give Love a Bad Name really, really rocks. Get Up versus Living on a Prayer. Alright, yes. Again, I love both these songs, and I'm not going to flip a coin. So, I'm going to give both Van Halen and Bon Jovi a point. So far, Van Halen, it's 2, Bon Jovi, 3. Dreams. I mean, why? Well, of course, I want to say for number 2, why I didn't give him a point for that song is it's played. I mean, that's one of those songs by Van Halen that's really played to death, like Dance the Night Away, Running with the Devil, and Jump. And that's the one that I constantly hear all the time. Hence the reason I don't want to listen to the radio much anymore, because they play the same friggin' 90 songs over and over 3 or 4 times a day, and that's usually up there. I'll hear that song at least once or twice, but I'll hear it every day. But yes, I did give both Van Halen and Bon Jovi each a point for, you know, for track number 3. Now, track number 4, Dreams versus Social Disease. Not a big fan of... Oh, wait, no. Hold on a sec. Get Up versus Living on a Prayer. Yeah, I already did that. Dreams versus Social Disease. I love Dreams way better. So, Van Halen takes that point right there. So now it's a tie. 3 against 3. So, let's see. What do we got here? We also got Summer Nights versus Wanted Dead or Alive. Yes, Wanted Dead or Alive is one of the best tracks Bon Jovi has ever put out in their career. But I also love Summer Nights as much as I love Wanted Dead or Alive, so the score is still tied. 4-4. Best of Both Worlds versus Raise Your Hands. Yeah, again, both those tracks. I love them to pieces. And again, I'm not going to flip a coin over which one is better. You know, again. So, the score is still tied 5-5. Now, and plus Raise Your Hands, that was the next track. That was the other song that was used in the movie Spaceballs, when we're first introduced to Lone Star and Barf. When you see Lone Star's Winnebago for the first time flying out there in outer space, and you could hear the song blaring. And there's Barf, a.k.a. the late great John Candy, with that big doggy bowl and the big spoon. He's dancing around to Raise Your Hands, you know, until he's called by his boss, Captain Lone Star, to get on the teledar, get on the television or whatever it is, the telephone, you know, the phone vision to talk to Pizza the Hut. But yeah, that's the memories that I have right there of that song, along with Good Enough. Now, we're kind of crossing into, yep, we got two ballads going against each other. We got Love Walks In versus Without Love. Sorry, I love Walks In, so that point goes to Van Halen. Now, the score is Van Halen 6, Bon Jovi 5. Okay, let's see, what else? Yeah, most definitely. 5150 versus I Die For You. Seriously? Oh, come on, that is, 5150 is a killer hit. Killer track right there, going up against I Die For You. So you know what? Van Halen. 7 points Van Halen, 5 Bon Jovi. Now, the two final songs. This will determine, I don't know, which one do I like the best. We got Inside versus Never Say Goodbye. Well, yeah. Bon Jovi was really starting to make careers out of power ballads. You know, it's a good album and everything, but come on, it was the excessive 80s where bands like Bon Jovi and Van Halen should be rocking it out, not worrying about what the girls think. So, Van Halen gets the point. And the track that I did not put on here, just to balance everything out, is Wild in the Streets. I mean, I don't think anybody really cared about Wild in the Streets as much as they cared about Living on a Prayer, or You Give Love a Bad Name, Let It Rock, or Wanted Dead or Alive, or Raise Your Hands. But then again, I haven't listened to this album in so long. I used to listen to Slippery When Wet all the time. I think Without Love, you know, that's more heavy hitter. But you know what? Again, I love Love Walks In. I mean, for now, as we tally up the points, it looks like Van Halen with 8, Bon Jovi with 5. Van Halen wins. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I go ahead and put, say, Van Halen 1 or 1984 up against Slippery When Wet? Well, the thing is, 5150 was a big thing in Van Halen's career. They just lost David Lee Roth, I guess due to some turmoils within the band. I don't know exactly what it is. You know, I read Sammy Hagar's autobiography. I didn't read David Lee Roth's. But I think what it had a lot to do, and everybody always likes to say, especially you Van Halen fans that call the time with Sammy Hagar Van Hagar or Vangina. Thing is, you think Van Halen went soft once they got Sammy Hagar recruited. No. It wasn't Sammy Hagar's fault. It was Eddie. Eddie wanted to do experimentations because, you know why? When you think about it, when a band's been around for a while, audiences change. Audiences grow. And you have to grow with you. He probably thought that that would be a big help, not only growing with his audience, but help bring a much newer, younger fan base into the fold as well. And everybody went ahead and blamed Sammy Hagar for, oh, Van Halen went soft because of Sammy Hagar. They should have kept David Lee Roth in the band. I stopped listening to Van Halen when they became Van Hagar. You know, it's like sometimes you have to change personnel. AC/DC changed personnel. They had no choice. I mean, people say, oh, they stopped listening to AC/DC when Bon Scott died. They felt AC/DC died with Bon Scott. No, AC/DC, you see I'm wearing the shirt, AC/DC continued on without Bon Scott, and they sold a lot more records after Bon died. And here's a little trivia. I don't know how many of you AC/DC fans out there may know this, but Brian Johnson sang for a band called Geordie. Bon Scott went to see them play one time, and he actually got to meet Brian Johnson. And after that meeting, after seeing Brian Johnson's band, he told Angus and the boys, he said, you know, if I ever decide to leave the band to embark on a solo career, you got to put this man up as my replacement. And not only that, when Bon Scott died, not only did they have his blessings on that ahead of time, but they had the blessings from his family as well to continue on, because that's what Bon would have wanted. So, you know, you think about it sometimes, you know, there's some bands that could go ahead and replace, you know, members and continue on. I mean, Kiss did it for many years in the 80s. I mean, hell, they even took off their makeup and just wore regular street clothes and went the hairband way until the reunion tour of 1996, when they reunited with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, only a few more years down the road to go on a farewell tour, and then sometime later recruit Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer to replace Criss and Frehley, wearing their signature personas, which I'm not a big fan of. I mean, to me, Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer aren't bad players. I mean, I just wish they had their own personas, or the band just took the makeup off completely and said, hey, you know, that was then, this is now, let's move forward. But, you know, it's all about the money to Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. But the thing is, you know, like Van Halen did put out good music when Sammy joined the band, and the thing is, Van Halen gained something really good out of that. I mean, Sammy Hagar had been doing it when Van Halen were trying to cut their teeth in dive bars. And, you know, 5150, I mean, let me put it to you this way. 5150 was my introduction to Van Halen. I mean, I heard Jump before in the past, and I heard Panama, and that was it, but I didn't know who it was. And I remember seeing David Lee Roth on, you know, doing solo videos where he, like, did California Girls and, you know, all those, you know, cheesy covers. I mean, a lot of bands I was introduced, Bon Jovi, you know, I was introduced to Bon Jovi through Slippery When Wet. I was introduced to Van Halen through 5150. And, you know, Permanent Vacation by Aerosmith. I didn't know who any of these, and Girls, Girls, Girls by Motley Crue at the age of, all this at the age of 9. And, you know, Kiss Crazy Nights. You know, I was starting to listen to all this stuff by the time I was 9 years old. And, you know, Def Leppard. I was introduced to Def Leppard through the Hysteria album. And the 5150 album to me will always be special. And later on, I would go ahead with all these bands, and I would study up on their history, and I would start enjoying. A lot of these bands became my favorites. I mean, Aerosmith and Van Halen and AC/DC and, you know, Black Sabbath became among my favorites, right next to Guns N' Roses, right next to Metallica, right next to Nirvana and Pearl Jam. And, you know, that's how I really dug deep into all the metal, you know, all hard rock. You know, I love it all, man. I embrace basic heavy metal, thrash metal, speed metal, death metal, hair metal, glam metal, you know, punk metal, punk rock, grunge metal, all of it. I embrace all the hard rock, southern rock. I embrace it all, you know. I mean, once in a while, I can even get into some country, and I could get into some hip hop. You know? But at any rate, that was my ranking of Van Halen 5150 versus Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet. Tell me what you think is the better, which do you think was the better album? Did you think Do you think that 5150 is a superior album, or do you think Slippery When Wet is? Leave your comments in the box down below. But at any rate, you know, this is your old pal Russell J.S. wanting to wish you, as always, Godspeed. May the force be with you always. Take care of yourself, your family, friends, all those that you love. And, you know, be good to one another. Stay real, stay chill, stay humble. Live life simple. And I'll catch you on the next video. As always, Godspeed. May the force be with you always.